Welcome back to the Panthers Perspective. I'm Randy, and I'm here with
Coach Richard Davis.
our new AD. And where are you coming from, sir?
I'm coming from Carson City ISD, up by the Kennedy area. So it's about an hour and a half north of this, south of San Antonio. That's why I paused that. But yeah, so good move. I'm from this area, so it was a good move to come back home.
Oh, that's good. Where are you from, sir, originally?
So it's interesting. So I was born in Calallen, Texas, or Corpus Christi technically, but that Calallen area. My mom married a coach from Banquetti. Whenever we were at Banquetti, I was a student there. And we moved to Sinton shortly after that. Spent a couple years in Sinton, moved to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And then I graduated from Alice, Texas. So just about 40 minutes west of Corpus Christi. And then I've lived in a number of places, but primarily from the Coastal Bend area.
I got you, sir. So how are you liking it so far?
It's a great place. You know, so many of these small schools in these areas that maybe don't have the big money and all this stuff. Those are some of my favorite places to be because it matters. Like being an Rams Pass Panther matters to people in the community. And so it's fun to be a part of that. Obviously, you know, Friday Night Lights is everything to me. And in these small communities, it's so much better. I've been at big schools. I've seen big schools. And it just doesn't quite carry the same weight as it does in a community like Aransas Pass or, you know, any of these surrounding areas in Coastal Bend. So I've really enjoyed it. The kids are fantastic. They're hardworking. The staff cares about the kids. That's been very obvious. And so it's been a good experience.
So I see you coming in the morning and switching up the weight room. I really do
Yep.
appreciate that.
Yeah. So when I got here, and it's, you know, it's one of those things that every coach has kind of their own prerogative and how they want things. And that's kind of what I've told y'all as kids is that it's not necessarily that one program's right, one program's wrong. It's just that my program's mine and other coaches are theirs. And the way the weight room was currently situated just didn't fit the needs of how we lift. We do a lot of Olympic lifting, so your power cleans, your overhead presses, and we needed that extra area to make it a safe environment, but also it just made it feel bigger. I mean, it's a big space, and I just felt like it was being a little underutilized as far as spacing goes. But you know, a big part of that's also it's therapeutic for me to move things and to clean up things, and so it's been a good experience.
So I'm aware that this is your first AD job. How do you feel coming into that?
Yeah, so I grew up, you know, once my mom married an AD. He's actually the AD at Gregory Portland, and so I've grown up in the industry. I've seen a lot of his coaches become ADs. Obviously, now I'm one of those. So I have a lot of experience being the kid behind the scenes, you know, being at all the football games, being at all the baseball, basketball, kind of seeing what he does. Obviously, you're not privileged to the economic side of it, so budgeting and things like that. So that's been interesting just in 2 weeks to kind of be thrown into that, see what our money looks like, what we're spending it on. But it's exciting. It's different than coaching. You know, everybody talks about when you become an AD. In a lot of ways, you stop being a coach. And so I think y'all have seen as athletes that I've tried to keep that coaching aspect. 'Cause that's what I truly love. Being an AD is fun, but you don't get there without being a great coach. So the main thing is still the main thing, and that's coaching young athletes.
See, what I like about you, sir, is like, if we mess up, you're like, do it again. You don't just like, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that comes from, you know, coaching has developed so much over the years. It used to be a very almost militaristic kind of regimented thing where it was just do as I tell you to do all the time. And just like teaching, it's evolved to be a thing where you have to understand who your athletes are, what are their capabilities, and how can you match up your expectations to that. And so you've got to give athletes the opportunity to mess it up, but then try to get better. Like today, we talked about perfect reps over tons of reps. And so if you can get to that position where all your guys are doing perfect reps, you're going to get so much more. It's going to be more efficient. So that's kind of the thinking behind that.
So what are you expecting out of your athletes?
Yeah, for me, first and foremost, and a lot of coaches will say this, you know, it's just a matter of how much they believe in it, but we're student athletes. You know, I was a student athlete. I actually loved school. You know, I never wanted to miss because there was nothing else I was going to do. In Alice, Texas, as a teenager, there's only trouble when you don't, you know, when you're not busy doing something. And so we expect them first and foremost to be students. And every student has their own capacity. There's all A students, there's ABC, but at the bottom line, you're here for a reason. That's to get an education first and foremost. Athletics is a secondary component of that. It's an important component, but I expect them to be student athletes. I expect them to have full relentless effort all the time. My big pitch is Panthers with attitude. And that's a winning attitude. That's a driven attitude to be your best at all times. And so we have that expectation that because you're a student athlete, we should expect more out of you. You're the guys that are going to be our CEOs, our presidents, our teachers someday. And so there's that expectation that we're going to do a little more than all the other students do.
So what is your outlook for this year?
So really right now, the main components of what I'm doing is just trying to wrap my head around who everybody is, what their position is, whether that's coaching, teaching, like I just met all of y'all. So it's just trying to grasp around what it has been. And then that way you can gear towards your goals and figure out how you're going to arrive at those goals. Because at different places, you're going to arrive differently. If you went into a school where there was already a culture of winning state championships and all that, well, your goal is kind of just to keep it the way it is, and Coach Taylor, who came before me, he did a good job at getting y'all's numbers up. He did a good job at kind of cultivating a little bit of culture there. And so there's that baseline of culture. There's a baseline of a number of kids that are there. And so some good things were done. And now the goal is to build on top of that and make that next step of improvement moving forward.
Mm-hmm. So how's your outlook for football this year? I know that's the big thing.
We're in a crazy district, obviously. First and foremost, we're in a big travel district. So all of our away games are, the closest one we have, I believe, is either London or Orange Grove, depending on which one's closer, or West Oso, I guess. But that's the first thing is we've got a lot of travel. And then the top end of our district is as good as any in the state in 3A. Edna's, who are a good friend of mine, the coaching staff over there, they've been to, I believe, 4 straight state semifinals. If it weren't for Franklin, they probably would have gone to a couple of state finals when they had their quarterback before. London's a big school, one of the biggest 3As in the state. And so they've got numbers that we don't have, that a lot of schools in our district don't have. And then you've got Orange Grove, who from being at Alice was always a good program. They've always been able to win. They've always had good coaches, good kids. And then that's not even to mention, and I mispronounce it all the time, but Palacios down the road, who was kind of a throw-in into our district because they're so far south, but they've got good athletes also. So to me, we've got to get our offense and defensive programs in. We've got to develop our kids from a skill standpoint. And then we can't worry about what everybody else is doing. That's what a lot of coaches fall in love with, who beat who lost to who. And the bottom line is if we take care of our business on Friday nights, we're going to end up where we need to be. And so the goal is obviously always the playoffs. And then outside of that, it's just to improve from year to year. And if you continue to stack years like that, you're going to end up being where you want to be. And so it's not necessarily like an outlook as far as, hey, we're going to be in the second round. It's more, are we going to see the growth that we hope to see from year to year?
So how was your first week?
Oh, man. We've had a lot happen in our family recently. And so the first week, very uplifting. There's a lot of people that in Rand's Pass that care just because you're a part of Rand's Pass. And so that's been big. I've got a great secretary. There's some solid coaches that are on staff right now that have helped kind of alleviate some of that transfer over. The kids have been very gracious and have immediately kind of wanted to see what's new and have kind of bought in, I think. But it's just been crazy because the weight room has been my thing after school and before school, trying to get it situated. And then during school, I'm trying to be in all the athletic periods and get to know everybody from pre-athletics all the way up. And eventually I'll be down at the elementaries a little bit, trying to get to know the little ones. But it's been wild. I mean, everybody knows my name, but I don't know anybody's name, that kind of deal. And so that's been tough. But as far as just a first impression, it's been fantastic.
Yeah. So what are you coaching this year?
So when I was at Garden City, my job was to be the office coordinator and be the head boys track. And so this year I'm trying to really help with our track program. I think I'm doing hurdles and doing some jumps, but just wherever, Coach Hannah and Coach Bright and all them need the assistance, I'm trying to provide some assistance. Driving baseball a little bit here and there. Just trying to help where I can, just be a coach of the program, which is kind of the AD's job in reality. Then once football season comes in, it's obviously football time, but you got to, as an AD, that's the big difference is, and as a head track coach, when it's track season, all I care about is track, and off season. As an AD, I've got to be aware that our, There are girls that are in the middle of their softball season. They've got a tournament this week in Kennedy, which is where Karn City is. Same thing with baseball. So you've got to be aware of all these sports that, I told Coach West, I said, baseball is kind of my least experienced sport. I grew up loving it. I know the game well, but as far as hitting like a fungo bat or something, I've got no chance. That ball's going to hit the ground every time. So that's been the challenge, is just being a coach of all sports right now.
What advice would you give a young athlete?
This one's interesting. So what's funny is as coaches, we often give off this representation that we ourselves were just always fantastic athletes, or we never had issues or anything like that. And so what I would tell young athletes is that you kind of have to find not necessarily what your niche is, but understand what your weaknesses are. Just like an adult, when you're an adult, you're going to find that you've got weaknesses you didn't know about, whether that's money management, whether that's time management, whether it's just, struggling to separate work and family. I would just tell young athletes that the biggest thing you can do is just try to get better at something every day. Like when I was a high school athlete, I really struggled with being wrong. Like I struggled with not doing things the right way because I was a perfectionist. And so one of the people that really, and I might get a little emotional here, one of the people that was a big reason why I coach, his name's Tommy Essex. And my senior year, he passed away. He had a bunch of different types of cancer. Didn't really take care of himself, that kind of deal, I used to joke that back in the day when a lot of coaches did Copenhagen, he would like accidentally kind of spit it at you or whatever. But it was funny because me and him had this relationship where he had coached both of my dads in the hurdles, and then he coached me. And by the time he had coached me, he was already old, kind of couldn't move a lot, had a temper to him. And we would go at it all the time because I thought I was special. I was a good hurdler. I won a district title or two. But we would have at it. And he would say, well, you're not doing this right. Well, that was before videos on the phones and stuff. And so I would say, well, prove it. And he couldn't, we would have that interaction. Everybody kind of has that with some adult in their life. And he would tell me, well, leave practice. And I would say, okay, fine. And I would leave practice. And as I'm walking away at Alice, it's a long walk from the hurdles all the way to the sign. And I would turn around and look at him. And he'd be in a golf cart because he couldn't really walk around and stuff. And he'd wave me on to leave. And I would turn around and walk right back. But the point is that sometimes a relationship with a coach is not always sunflowers and daisies. Sometimes you need that guy that holds you accountable at a higher level, that doesn't accept you whenever you're acting out, when you're not doing to the best of your ability. And he was that guy for me. My dad coached me. But my dad didn't really coach me. He was very hands-off because he didn't want to show any favoritism or anything like that. But Coach Tommy Essex was one that he was, whether I liked it or not, he was going to tell me what was real. And it made me realize very quickly that that's more beneficial than somebody that's, kind of blow smoke and make you feel like you're doing the right thing all the time. But I don't remember what the initial question was, but that kind of the bottom line is like, find that coach that you love, find that coach or that teacher that makes that connection with you and run with it. And had he lived longer, we would have been, lifelong friends because of it. And that's the thing, is that these relationships between you and your kids, they never end. I got an email when I got this job from a kid that I thought kind of hated my guts. I was a young coach at Angleton, and he was a kid that really struggled with passing classes. And I was kind of given the job of, get this kid to pass. He's one of our best receivers. So during COVID, I would take him into the film room, and we would sit in there for hours and work on like floral design and classes I didn't even know existed. But he passed, but he hated every moment of it. So he called me, goes, man, I just think about those days we spent in there. And he's like, I love those days. And I was like, well, at the time you didn't, you were like, why can't I go home or whatever? But anyways, like I said, I don't remember what you asked, but the relationships is what sticks out to me about athletics.
Well, going back to the initial question, I said, what advice would you give to a young athlete?
Yeah, so the big thing is just understand that 99.9% of educators and coaches have your best interest in mind. And then communicate with them and learn how to talk to adults, even when it's not favorable to you. Because just like kids, kids, they'll go through so much. We went through a lot as kids also, but as adults, that doesn't stop. And so that adult might be having a day, just like that kid might be having a day. So I would just say, do your best to kind of develop an understanding with the staff. Do your best to develop an understanding with each other as student athletes, and the worst thing that can happen on a team is to have this atmosphere of not understanding and not accepting. We're all different. You and I are very different. But we can sit in these chairs and talk because we have an understanding of what it means to share a capacity of love for your fellow human. So I would just say, just try to develop that as much as possible, and then take things with a grain of salt, but also take them that, maybe that person's right. Maybe that person does see something that I don't see in myself, and it'll make you better.
So going back to football,
Okay,
what would you
good.
say?
That's my favorite one.
Going back to football, what do you say? Like type of offense or whatever you can?
So I grew up actually in the wing tee. So my dad was the head coach at Sinton. We went to the state championships running the wing tee, which is a very, down your throat run offense. Not similar to what the Eagles did, but it was that same idea of we're going to set up the pass with the run.
Mm.
So after 2 years at Alice, which were my 4 high school years, we were playing Cal Allen, and Cal Allen was our rival, but we were 0-19 all time against them and never beaten them. And my dad went to his office coordinator at the time. He said, I want you to learn the spread, which at that time is still called the air raid. It was Mike Leach's and Hal Mummy's offense. And so all of a sudden, we were chunking the ball around the yard, and my senior year, we went down to we went down to Cal Allen to play at Cal Allen, and we went down 0-19 at half. We were down 19 points. We were undefeated. They were like 1-2 or something. So everybody thought that was the year Alice was going to pull it off, And we walked to the locker room, and our guys were throwing their helmets. They're throwing a fit. And my dad just walked in and just said, just sit down and calm down. And we won the game 22-19. And we came back. But it was a good deal. But so what I got from that was that there's not just one way to do something. So like when I went to Carson City, I brought our GP offense, which is it's pretty run dominated. It's inside zone, counter, wide zone, basically everything. And then it's RPOs and all that. Well, I got to Carson City and we didn't have the capacity to do that. We just weren't ready. We didn't catch the ball well. We were kind of young. And that next year I told our head coach, I said, if we do this again, we're going to have the same result. We're going to be 1-9. And so we switched to basically, if you watch the 49ers, that's what the 49ers do. We get under center, we get in the gun, we do all sorts of different stuff. But the primary principle of it is we're going to run wide zone, pin and pull sweep, and then we're going to run our bootlegs and our play action off of that. So we were more run dominated. And so right now, that's probably what we're going to carry in. We've got a good running back coming back. We've got some good linemen coming back. Our quarterback is a young quarterback that's got some experience now, some good experience. He's played some hard teams. And what it does, it helps your defense. It keeps your defense off the field, and you don't want your defense on the field for more than 3 plays. That's the goal, right? 3 and out. We call them turkeys. And so it helps that. It keeps offenses like Edna and London off the field, and it makes them play defense for extended amounts of time, and hopefully you wear them out and you finish your drives in the red zone and score. So we're going to play a smash mouth form of football, but we're also going to throw the ball a little bit. So it's a little bit of both.
So you're speaking of defenses. What are your plans on the defenses, right?
So to me, the goal with defense is you've got to find whoever that coordinator is. They need to be able to develop their defense their way, and it needs to be almost a separate culture into itself. Defensive football, the people that are good at it are a special breed. They need to be somebody that is willing to put their body on the line for their team. And on offense, there's some of that. You're blocking, but on defense, every play, you're just as likely as the guy next to you to have to make a big tackle. If you're talking about a big running back or something like that, that can wear on you. You're talking about a guard pulling, right? And you got a spill counter, like you're giving your body up for your team. You're making an unselfish decision so the whole thing with defense is that you get a defense coordinator, whoever that might be, and they instill physicality into that defense, and they instill an understanding into that defense on how we want to align, be gap sound, be responsible on the back end, and then you just let your kids play. Defense and offense are very different in that way. Offense is kind of more of a thinker's game sometimes, or a defense is it's a reactionary game because you never know what formation they're going to give you or what they're going to run, and so you've got to be ready for everything. So on defense, it's all about the culture of physicality and creating turnovers.
So what do you think about the community's involvement?
So, obviously being new, I don't have a ton of experience with Aransas Pass in itself, but I know that South Texas, baseball is really good down here, but football, when you talk about attendance, is king. You can go to whether you're 1-9 or 10-0, you're going to find thousands of people at a Friday night football game. And so to me, the community plays such a big part because when you're winning, and I don't mean winning as in record, but when you're winning as far as an AD goes, you've got great support from the community. So they're putting signs out in their front yards. They're closing up shop to come to a Friday night football game. They're donating to your booster club and doing things for the kids, providing meals. And I think what that does is it creates a positive rapport with our athletes in their community. The big thing that you really, when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of it, the wins are the wins, the losses are the losses. But what the goal of academics and the goal of athletics in regards to academics is to have you guys graduate and come back and be the providers for the next generation. Whether that's teachers, whether that's, a trash man, whether that's a director, whether that's a podcaster, whatever that is. But the community building that relationship with its young people is such a key essential to bringing the next generation of that community back. Because we want y'all to feel so much pride in Aransas Pass that after you go do your thing in college or you go do your thing in studying abroad, whatever you do after high school immediately, not everybody's journey is the same, that you feel this dying need to come back to Aransas Pass and make it better. And sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. I know a lot of my friends went back to Alice, and I think a lot of that goes into the positive environment that was around at the time. And I think it's a two-way street. I think our kids have to be prideful in their community, and they need to donate time and they need to donate some efforts to making it better. I mean, we're not this community of millionaires and billionaires. We're tough people that have tough jobs and do tough things, and that's a great identity for a community. It really is. I mean, there's something to having money, but there's also something to just understanding what hard work is and what it means to earn what you have and bettering the things you already have. And that's one of the things that people struggle with is everybody wants new. Well, heck, maybe I just need to add a set of paint onto it or whatever. But my point is we want to create athletes and we want to create a community that supports our athletes and vice versa in hopes that as we go into the future, things get better for the neighborhoods that we support. Wherever I'm coaching at, that's the goal with community involvement.
So how would you see our program in like 2 years?
So the goal is to eventually get to where all of our, I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to sit like this, but anyways, but the goal is to get to where we're constantly sending our programs to the playoffs. I want coaches coming up to me for the next sport going, man, when are we going to get our kids? And I get to say, whenever they're done winning the region, whenever they're done with their playoff run. We've got boys basketball right now going to the playoffs, and I think they've got a great chance to win the region. But we want that stuff. So many schools go, we want this program to be great, but not this one. Well, you end up with nobody being great at that point, and you're like a big part of that. Like you're on the bench during the basketball games, you're a football player for us. I don't know what else you do, but you do a lot. You know what I mean? And the goal is in 2 years for that to be widespread. For there not to be only 4 or 5 of you, for there to be 30 or 40 of you that want to be involved in everything. And that's the goal, is to build up all of our programs, including our academics. One of the things we're going to utilize is a mentor coach program where we've talked about it, where a kid's going to be assigned to a coach, and their job is not only to make sure they're passing, but make sure they know how to talk to their teachers, make sure they can handle issues that arise, make sure they can celebrate victories, like making the honor roll and stuff like that. But that's what I'm gearing towards in 2 years, and the football record will come. If you do that, the football record will come. We've got a great set of classes right now that are about to come up through our football program. And so the goal is just to stay the course, build on things, improve where we can, and just, make this community proud of our athletic program. So that's the outlook for 2 years.
One of my favorite things that you introduced was the shirts. Like the prints? I really did like that.
Yeah, so the shirts is a funny thing. So my dad kind of started that, and I'm sure other programs have done it. But the basic concept is there's three shirt colors. So we'll use the example of us. If we were to switch to a white off-season shirt, right now we have a purple one. We'll probably switch that to like a gray or something. But there's weight goals, speed goals, and they have to align to meet certain requirements. And each test we do, we'll put all things together and we'll figure out. So the first shirt you get, in our case, we have a purple shirt. So you'll switch into a purple shirt from a gray. And that basically says that you are a really strong developing athlete the next shirt, which is kind of the goal really, is to get to a black shirt. So my dad always said that if you walk into our off season and you see 10, 12, 14 black shirts, we're going to be really good in whatever we do. Because we've got kids that have developed their strength, they've developed their speed, and they've tested well, which means that you're in a great place as an athletic program. Like our first year at GP, I don't think we expected it, but we had like 10 or 12 black shirts that were there the year before. They were 2-8 or 3-7, whatever it was. And we ended up going 9-4 and going to the third round. But if you walked in there, you saw those shirts. So it's the same idea. And then the last one's a gold shirt, which I think my dad's been coaching. I don't want to misspeak because he might see this, but I think he's been coaching for 40 years. And sorry, that's my laundry deal. But he's been coaching for 40 years, and I think he's had like 8 to 10 gold shirts. So that gold shirt is like that kind of, and like we had one kid at GP get it. Now he's a decathlon athlete at Houston. He didn't get it till his last test, so he never actually got to wear it. You know what I mean? And so it's like that means you are an elite of elite athlete. You have elite speed, elite size, and weight deals. The beauty of it though is that as a lineman, your speed requirements are different than a receiver, right? Like I'm not going to ask you and JJ to have the same speed and strength, okay? So his speed's a little harder to get, but his weight's a little lower. Where y'all's weight's a little higher, but your speed's a little lower. So the idea is that you're giving kids the opportunity to succeed, just like anything you do. Like when you set goals, you want to make sure that they're attainable. You don't want to make them easy, but you want to make sure that somebody can attain them. And if we did it just straight across, somebody would get left behind, whether it's in the strength category or the speed category. But when we get to finally do that after our first test while I'm here, that'll be a cool deal. But we make a big deal of it. We bring y'all up. We say, hey, going from a purple shirt to a black shirt, and we do 3 claps. But it also gives you that pride of, I've earned this thing. And then it gives the people below you, because I remember I was not a shirt guy until going into my senior year. I finally got it because I always lacked in the weight room. I was like a stick in high school. I was like 6 foot, like 155, 165. I'm like 230 now. I could play O-line right now. And so I always struggled with the strength part. My senior year, I finally got it. And I got I believe it was an orange shirt at Alice. And I was like the proudest I've ever been. It didn't matter. I had won a district championship in hurdles. I'd been to the playoffs in football. Like that shirt for me as a singular person was more important because I always looked at the guys and said, well, I'm as good of an athlete as he is. Well, I wasn't, you know what I mean? That was the reality of it. But it's just allows every kid to strive for something. So that's why we do that.
Well, I do appreciate you coming, sir.
100%, man. First of all, this is really cool. That's the first thing is this is really neat. A lot of schools have all this stuff and they don't do anything with it. Mm-hmm. And so for the fact that, and I'd seen y'all do the one with Principal Rums and the superintendent, and that one was pretty neat. Not as neat as his morning announcements, but you get what I'm saying. So I think it's awesome that y'all do this. I think this is awesome that we provide our kids with this opportunity to get involved in this stuff. This is what's making money nowadays. Mm-hmm. I mean, I geek out. I go home and the TV turns off and my phone's on and I'm watching podcasts, Pat McAfee, you name it. And so it's neat that we're offering these programs, and it's one of those things that we talk about the community investing in our schools. It'd be great to be able to do more things like this. And so I'm excited, man. Aransas Pass has been great to me so far. My fiance is going to come join us next semester. And so to have our whole family here is going to be a good deal. And so I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm excited about getting to work with you kids and the staff members that are here. And so, yeah, man, it's A+ so far.
Thank you for watching The Panthers Perspective.